Everyone experiences pain, loss, and setbacks. So how do we accept life's challenges? Continuing our 13-week series called Your Empowerment Zone, we have spiritual and self-help author Dr. Charlene Proctor, who's the founder of the Goddess Network, an online educational resource for topics on spiritual growth, positive thinking, consciousness, and unity. In today's series, Charlene is here to help increase our resiliency when we're going through turbulent changes. Welcome back, Charlene.
Thank you.
Doctor, challenges are something that we all will experience and we can all identify with. And it really doesn't matter whether we do the right things or say the right things, right?
Well, there's a favorite story that the monks at the Oneness University in India tell people who attend their workshops on suffering, and it's the story of Kisa Gotami and the Buddha. And it goes something like this. There's a woman who lost her son. Her name was Kisa Gotami, and she was so enveloped in her grief, she went to every person in her village looking for a miracle cure. And finally, one person in the village sent her to see the Buddha. So she goes to the Buddha and she says, "Master, help me. Please give me a cure so that I can bring my child back to life." And the Buddha says to her, "Go to a home in the village and bring me a handful of mustard seeds from a home where no one has experienced any grief, suffering, death, or loss, and then you will be free from suffering." So Kisa Gotami goes from person to person in the village looking for a home with a family of people who have never experienced any death or loss. And of course she cannot find one because suffering, death, and loss is something that every human being in every family has experienced in some way.
Sure.
So when she realizes this, she's able to process her grief and accept it and move forward. And she goes to the forest to bury her child and goes to the Buddha to seek comfort. So the point of the story is that as humans, we're always sharing the same kind of suffering because we're all one. And there's no one on this planet that will ever be without suffering. And when we resist the suffering, sometimes we dissociate from that experience. We tend to blame others, and we set up all these escape routes in the mind in the form of distractions. So your resistance keeps those experiences sometimes coming and coming again, and that's not a good thing.
Now, of course, I'm sure all of us have at one time or another done the resistance thing, especially if someone close to us has passed on, and it's a very difficult process to accept. Why can't we think about something else to just continue on and not remember?
Well, if hurt is present, we shouldn't create some explanation for it. We have to experience the hurt completely and allow ourselves to go straight through that experience. We have to give ourselves permission to feel these things. Feel them just as if joy were in front of us. And we tend to be afraid, and we shouldn't be afraid, because suffering is just another experience, and it does come to an end. When we embrace it and move through it, then we won't get stuck in it.
So how can we embrace, and I'm just going to call it the light and the dark. How can we embrace the light and the dark that we go through in our lives?
Well, the first thing I think we need to do is to change our outlook on change. And this is really big picture thinking. These major upheavals in life are very, very challenging, but we need to see adversity as change and not loss and failure. And we tend to think of life as losing and winning, and it's really not. Change is necessary for all of us and all life forms to evolve. Adversity actually is a very, very deep spiritual lesson because we're being shown a piece of life that we need to see for our own transformation. The next thing I would tell people is to remain fully present to their suffering. When we're fully present during loss or grief and all these other forms of adversity in our life, it's really important to be present, because until we process our pain, we can't move through it. And people often stuff their pain or manage their emotional pain, and you know that just translates into poor health and all kinds of other bad habits. So my advice is to feel our suffering and to experience it in order to move past it. Another tip I have is to affirm your positive present moment benefits no matter what. And this is all about accepting life's contrasts, whether they're from financial loss or illness or divorce or grief. All these things, we still need to accept life wholeheartedly. And we have to accept the good with the bad, right? We teach our kids that. that. And as adults, we tend to resent life. We only want the good. So all we have to remember is to keep moving forward and ask for that divine assistance, because I always say we're amazed at where help arrives. So we always have to be open to receiving our good.
Now, speaking of kids, as a parent, what advice would you give me, and of course all the parents out there listening now, in terms of helping their children accept the challenges that will lie ahead and not resist?
The biggest advice and best advice I can give is to just trust life, because God has a greater plan for us than we think we do. So we need to learn to go with the flow and accept it. And when the bad times come, remember that those permit us personal growth, and it always gives us a greater capacity to love.
My mom always says, let go, let God. Now let's end with that wonderful affirmation of the day.
Okay, let's affirm. Change is good. I am comforted knowing starting over is an ongoing job. I am becoming more resilient with every circumstance, and I never give up. Life is a cycle, and there's always more room for love. I believe I am evolving every day.
Thank you, Doctor. Great words.
Thanks.
And if you'd like to download the Empowerment Affirmation of the Day and for self-help exercises that will help you develop more resiliency in life, visit CharleneProctor.com. In next week's Your Empowerment Zone, Charlene reveals why being a lifelong learner is vital to an empowered and balanced life. So stay tuned for that.